Welcome to Marlene's Atelier. I'm so excited because today we kick off the pencil skirt project. And in this very first lesson, I'm going to show you how to draft our skirt pattern. We're going to start off with the basic block, and then I'll show you how to incorporate darts that give the pencil skirt its classic shape. And finally, we're going to add a kick pleat in the back, which gives it a touch of elegance, but also functionality. So stick around. That's what's happening in the atelier. Let's get started making our skirt pattern. So just a couple things before we get started, okay? I've gone ahead and I've created two 90-degree angles here, okay? Centered on a center line, all right? Now, when you pattern, if you've never had any experience patterning before, there's a couple things that are really important to keep in mind, okay? First, it's really important that we keep our lines straight and squared. And when I mean squared, I mean a perfect 90-degree angle. If we don't do this, okay, we're going to cause a lot of fitting problems and also tailoring problems down the road. So be very diligent about getting your lines straight and squared. The second thing that is really important is that you make sure that you label everything. Most patterns are labeled with numbers or letters, one or the other. And we want to make sure that every point that we put on our pattern is labeled so that first we don't get lost in the pattern, number one, and number two, if we have to go back, we can find that point very easily and make a correction or make a change, okay? All right, so with all that being said, we'll dive in. I'm working with the medium size pattern, okay? And what we've done, what I've done here is I've gone ahead and I've labeled where my horizontal and vertical lines cross 0. So that's my starting point, all right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish my length. That's going to be the first thing. So we're going to come down from 0 to 1, 58 centimeters. Okay, now my ruler is only 50 centimeters long, so I'm going to mark a little notch at 50 and then come down another 8 centimeters and mark that. Okay, so that's going to be 1. And what we want to do is we want to square 1 across. Okay, so I'm going to take my beautiful L ruler here. I'm going to line it up with my vertical line. And I'm going to square my length across 58 centimeters, okay? And I'll flip it around and line it up as well, once again, nice and straight, and do the same thing here to the back, okay? So there we have it. All right, we should also label our skirt. This is going to be the front of our skirt, okay? So this will be the front, and this is going to be the back. So we don't get things confused, okay? Excuse me. I think I have chalk in my throat. All right, so we're coming down to our second point, 2, which is 20 centimeters. This is going to be our hip depth, okay? So this is going to be 2. And so what we're going to do is we're going to square this across as well. Okay, so I'm going to grab my ruler, once again, line it up with my vertical line nicely and square 2 across. Okay. This is actually going to be our hip depth. Okay. There and there. Oh, I certainly do have chalk in my throat. My goodness. Okay, so let's go ahead. We'll label this our hip. We'll label this our length. And actually, this top line is our waist. Each of these points, as we've come in vertically and created these points, these are what is known as balance lines, okay? And they're really, really important. We have balance lines through everything. If we're making, if we're making trousers or waistcoats or jackets, they're balance lines. So they're really important because they help us ensure that when we put our garment together, that everything matches, all right? And yes, and also when you get into fitting down the road, balance lines are extremely important because there's times that we have to go in and we have to change balance lines in order to get things to fit properly, all right? So just a word about balance lines. They're there, they're your friend. Pay close attention to them, okay? All right. So we've got our waist, we've got our hip, we've got our length, we've got our back, we've got our front. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to establish the width, okay? We've got our vertical balance lines now. We want to get the width across our skirt. And we're going to start working on the hip first. Now, what's important to understand, when you're working with a garment, there's always 4 parts to it, right? Skirt has 2 fronts, 2 backs. Trousers, 2 fronts, 2 backs. Jacket, 2 front, 2 back, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? So when we're looking at establishing width, all right, and especially in the case of our skirt, we're going to be taking our hip and we're going to be dividing that by 4, okay? So our hip measurement is 95 centimeters. 1/4 of that is 23 3/4, all right? Now, what we're also going to do is we're going to add seams into our garment, all right? So what we have to do here is we have to take and add 2 centimeters. We're going to add a centimeter. This is going to be our center front. This is our side seam, and this is going to be our center back, okay? And we can just write side right here, S-I-D-E, side seam, okay? So that we know. So we have to add a centimeter to the side seam and a centimeter to the center front. So we're going to come across 25 3/4 to do that, okay? So we're taking 23.75 and we're adding 2 centimeters to it to come to 3. So this is 3, okay? And now what we can do is we can square that up and down to the waist and the length. So we can put that up top here, bring that over to 3, and square it down real nice, okay? Perfect. It's starting to look like a skirt all of a sudden, isn't it? Yeah. All right, now the back, we're going to do the same thing, except I'm going to add a little bit more to the back, okay? Because we've got a little bit more curve in the back of our body at the hip, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add another 2 centimeters for ease, okay? So instead of adding just 2, we're adding 4, all right? So we're adding 23 3/4 plus 4 is going to give us 27 3/4 at the back, okay? 2 for seams and 2 for ease. And this is going to be 4 here, okay, 0.4. And we can again square this very nicely up and down using the waist to do so. All right, so we'll square that up and down. There we go. Perfect. Beautiful. Okay, so here now, what we can do is we can label this CF for center front line, and this can be CB for center back. Okay, so we've got front and back, side, our side seam, our center back, our center front, we've got all this. Now what we need to do is work on establishing the waist, all right, the waistline. Now, we have a personal intake chart that we've used to establish how many darts we need for the front and back of our skirt, all right, and exactly how big they are. Now, in order to accomplish that, right, we're going to take the difference between the waist and the hip. And whatever that number is, we're going to go to the personal intake chart and look at what the closest number is. So when I did mine, my difference was 28, or excuse me, difference between my waist and my hips was 26 centimeters, okay? So based on that, I need to add 2 darts in the front of my skirt that are 1¼ centimeters each. And then I need to add 2 darts in the back of my skirt that are 2½ centimeters each, okay? So to make this really simple, plus we have to add seams, all right? So to make this really simple, let's just put it on the board here. We'll just add it all up, okay? So on the front of our beautiful skirt, okay, we have to take our waist and divide that by 4, right? My waist is 69. That gives me 17¼ centimeters, okay? 17.25. To that, I'm going to add 2 centimeters, okay, for seams, just like I did at the hip. So that's going to bring me to 19.25 with the seams. And then I have to add another 2½ centimeters because I have 2 darts at 1¼ each, okay? So I have to add 2.5 for darts. Okay, so that's going to give me 21.75. Okay, so what we're going to do is we need to establish our waist at 21.75. And so here, just get rid of that line a little bit. All right, in fact, let's just take our little eraser here and there we go. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over from our center front line, okay, 21¾ centimeters, and mark that, okay? That's going to be our side seam, and we're going to label that 5. That's our side seam, okay? Now, we have to place our darts. And to do this, it's really super simple, okay? There's a standard measurement to place darts, and it never really changes unless for some reason you have to change the darts or put them somewhere else because of the client's figure. But for today, we're going to work with these standard measurements. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over from our center front line here, okay? 7½ centimeters, and we're going to mark the first leg of our dart. See that? Right there. Then we're going to come over 1¼ centimeters and mark the second leg of our dart, just like that. So there's the top of our dart. Then we're going to come over another 3 centimeters from our second leg and mark the first leg of our second dart. And then come over 1¼ centimeters again and add the second leg to our second dart. And it's just that simple, okay? We also have to establish the length of our dart. And these front darts are going to be 9 centimeters long, okay? So we're going to come down 9 centimeters from the top waistline, and we're going to put a nice little line here. We're just going to extend that line, square it out nicely like so, okay? And now I'm going to come in and just establish the middle of my dart here, in both of these. And now I can finish these off so you can see what they'd look like. We'll just do a little pictorial depiction here. Okay? All right. So there's our front darts. It's that easy. Very, very easy. Okay? And now we're going to finish off the front by coming in and adding a nice little curve here because we have to reconcile between where our waist stops and the side seam, right? So I'm just going to come in and bring in a nice gentle curve here and just curve it right into the side seam like so. All right? So that looks lovely. That's perfect. So the front is done. We could just put a big like boom, done sign right there. So we'll work on the back. Now the back is no different, right? We're going to take 17.25. We're going to add 2 centimeters for seams. That's going to bring us to 19.25. Okay, but now because we have 2 darts that are 2.5 centimeters apiece, we have to add 5 centimeters to this. Okay, so we're adding 5 centimeters. That's going to bring us to 24.25 centimeters. Okay, so we're going to come in from the center back seam. We're going to come in 24 and a quarter centimeters, and we're going to mark that right here. Okay, and that's going to be 6. Okay, and we're going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to come in 7.5 centimeters from the center back seam and mark the first leg of our first dart. Come over 2.5 centimeters and mark the second leg of our second dart. Come over 3 centimeters and mark the first leg of our second dart. And then come over 2.5 and mark the second leg of our second dart. Oh my God, I hope that doesn't sound too confusing. I hope not. All right, so there we have our back darts already. And this dart in the back, we're actually going to come down 13 centimeters from the waistline, and that's going to be the length of these darts in the back, okay? All right, and we can just square this line across visually here nicely, okay? And again, I'll find the center of my dart and draw a line. It's important because we need to know where, when we come in to actually cut our pattern out, okay, we're going to be punching a hole at the bottom of these darts so that we know when we go to chalk it, we know where that dart ends. We can see it, okay? So it's important to do this. All right? Boom and boom. Done and done. So there we have our front darts. And now we can come in and add a very gentle curve to the side seam in the back, okay? So that looks lovely. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. All right, so there's just a couple other little pieces, little details that we need to add. We're adding a kick pleat to this skirt, okay? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up from the bottom here, 22 centimeters, and mark this. Now, you might say, well, Marlene, how do you get 22 centimeters? It depends, right? I mean, it depends on how long the skirt is and where you want that slit to stop, okay? Now, I obviously don't want my bum hanging out, so you know, we have to think if this is my hip depth, right? That's going to be that's like right about where the middle of my bum is, okay? So I want to make sure that, you know, my rear end isn't going to be hanging out of my skirt. So it just depends on the length of the skirt, right? I mean, if we had a skirt that went all the way down to the floor, we would say, well, where do we want the slit to stop? Maybe we're putting a slit in the side, which would be very sexy. Maybe I would want that slit to only come up to my knee. So for a standard size such as this, I think 22 centimeters is a good length for a kick pleat. But it's going to vary from person to person, all right? My advice is make your kick pleat longer if you have to, because you can always shorten it, but you can't lengthen it, all right? You cannot lengthen it. So make it a little bit longer and then shorten it up if you have to. That would be my advice, okay? All right. The second thing that we have to contend with is our zipper and our zipper placement. And so we are going to put in just a very standard zipper, okay? Very easy. I just bought a plain black zipper here. And the reason for that is because I want you to experience sewing a zipper in by hand, all right? You know, I know a lot of times we put invisible zippers into skirts. But if I have to be completely and utterly honest with you, I absolutely detest invisible zippers and having to put them in. I hate them with a passion, okay? They're just annoying and they never look right. Well, they do, but it's just too much work, in my opinion. So, and so the only place you're going to use an invisible zipper, very honestly, is on a skirt. All right, you're not going to use them on trousers. You're going to use something different on trousers. And of course, we don't. Well, you might be putting zippers in your waistcoats and jackets down the road. I don't know. But hopefully they're not invisible. So anyway, I wanted to teach you a proper way of putting a zipper in by hand, which I think you will find extremely satisfying, okay? So I just have a very simple zipper, and what I'm gonna do in order to find the placement, okay, is I'm going to measure my zipper from the top of where the zipper starts down to where the zipper ends, that little metal piece at the very bottom. I'm going to measure that. Now, why? Because that's exactly what we're going to see. That's exactly the amount of space we need to leave for the zipper. Everything else is going to be either hidden in the waistband or below into the skirt, okay? So my zipper from start to end is 18 centimeters, okay? So I'm gonna come down 18 centimeters from my waist, right here, and I'm gonna make another little notch right there, okay? So now I have a notch where my kick pleat is gonna go, and I have a notch where my zipper is gonna go, okay? So here I can put, if you want, I'll put kick. So we know it's for our kick pleat, okay? And here I'll put zip. So we know it's for our zipper, okay? So now all said and done, we have our beautiful skirt pattern finished, done and finished, okay? And what we're gonna do next is I'm going to actually come back and show you my pattern that I have done on paper, okay? And I'm gonna show you, oh, hold on, one more thing. You know what we need to add right this second? Is we need to add a grain line. I almost forgot. This is really important because we're going to be working with a plain cloth to start, okay? And so we need a grain line in order to make sure that the pattern is laying straight with the grain on our cloth. And now that you've taken your introduction to textiles class, I assume you're all experts on what all those terms mean, okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to square a line, all right? Where do I want to put this line? Yeah, I guess I'll put it right here. That's fine. I don't want it to interfere with my darts or get confused with anything else. So I'm going to square a line right here. I'm just going to make it a little light, and I'm going to bring it from the very top to the very bottom of my skirt, okay? So let's do that. And then we can label this, I want to make sure that's straight, GL, grain. I'll just put grain. We got a lot going on this skirt, right? A lot going on this skirt. And I'll do the same thing here, where I'll add a grain line here in the back from the very top, okay, to the very bottom. And so what we're going to be doing is using this line to measure. So here we go, grain, G-R. I don't even know if I spelled that right. Well, you know what? I think that's correct. I don't think we would spell it any other way. I haven't spelled grain line in a while. Anyway, so we have the grain line, and we're going to be using this to measure from this line at both the top and the bottom out to our selvage to make sure that our pattern is laying straight. Okay, so that's really super important. Thank you for joining me in the Atelier today. If you've enjoyed this lesson, please like, share, and subscribe. I really appreciate it. Also, leave your questions in the comments section below. In our next lesson, I'm going to be showing you how to lay and chalk the beautiful cloth that we've chosen for our pencil skirt project using the pattern that we drafted today. So you won't want to miss it. That's what's happening next time in the Atelier.